Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Scott Braley, CEO of Curl BC. Before we begin our 2026 AGM, we'd like to start by recognizing the recipients of the 2026 Curl BC Annual Awards, followed by the inductees into the class of 2026 BC Curling Hall of Fame, and then another special announcement. Thank you to everyone who submitted nominations for the Curl BC Annual Awards and the BC Curling Hall of Fame. These recognitions are an important way to recognize and celebrate the individuals, teams, and organizations who have made meaningful contributions to curling in BC. Here are the recipients of the 2026 Curl BC Annual Awards. The Anita Cochran Coach of the Year Award, Len Chong. The Breaking Barriers Award, co-winners Sharon Morrison and Amanda Lynn Ballard. The Curling Center Volunteer of the Year Award, co-winners Diane Cameron and Jean Lederer. The Curling Center of the Year Award, Royal City Curling Club. The Outstanding Achievement in Major Event Hosting Award, Cloverdale Curling Club for hosting the 2026 Canadian Mixed Doubles Curling Championship. The Elsie Mackenzie Youth and Junior Curling Program Volunteer Award, Wendy Copeland. The Jeanette Robbins Builders Award, which is also the Sport BC President's Award, Lawrence Wojtowicz. The Judy Roberts Friendship Award, Karen Watson. The Pat Kennedy Long Service Award, co-winners Laura Rampton and Roxy Giles. The Ron Houston Administrator of the Year Award, co-winners Darren Heath and Blair Jarvis. The Sponsor of the Year Award, Affordable Floors. The Wally Malott Official of the Year Award, Karen Sauer. The Team of the Year Award, Team Mitch Young. Special recognition of exceptional performance by a team, Team Taylor Reese Hansen. And finally, the Athlete of the Year, winning 3 BC championships, Cody Tanaka. Big congratulations to all of this year's recipients. Well done. We'll now recognize the inductees into the class of 2026 of the BC Curling Hall of Fame. And I'll just say, with the previous award winners and with these 3 we're going to name, they will be recognized in person at a later date, hopefully at their host club. The first inductee in the class of 2026, Jim Cotter for the curler category. The second inductee, Melissa Saligo for the curler and builder category. And the third inductee, Diane Barker for the builder category. Congratulations and thanks very much to this year's Hall of Fame inductees for all your years of amazing contributions. And finally, we promised another special announcement, and here we go. Over the season, we've taken a close look at how we present ourselves as an organization and how well our identity reflects both the sport today and the direction curling in BC is heading. Because of that, we began the process of developing a new logo and brand identity, one that better reflects who we are today and supports a more unified curling identity across Canada. Now, Curl BC has a new brand. We are pleased to present to you the centerpiece of this rebrand, our new logo. Inspired by the sun and waves of the BC flag, the design is built based on the Curling Canada brand. Together, these elements reflect both our provincial identity and the sport at the heart of what we do. In alignment with Curling Canada and the other provincial and territorial associations across the country, we are proud to be a part of a more unified curling identity across Canada. This rebrand will begin rolling out across our digital platforms and physical assets starting tomorrow, so please stay tuned. And if you've been watching carefully, I even have my new shirt on, so you'll see the brand there. Lyle, thanks very much, and I will pass it on to you to start the AGM. You're on mute, Lyle.
All right, I lost my notes. All right. Welcome to Curl BC's annual general meeting. My name is Lyle Sieg. I'm the chair of Curl BC's Board of Governors and will be chairing the meeting. I will now call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that while you are all joining us from communities and regions across the province, we are hosting this virtual meeting on traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples who have resided here since time immemorial. We recognize, honor, and respect the lands upon which we live, work, and play. Curl BC is honored to ground our work on these territories, and we strive to increase access to curling for all of British Columbians. I would like to ask Lindsay Shannon if you could please confirm we have a quorum and the number of member facilities present. A quorum is a minimum of 20% of Curl BC's 83 member facilities, which would be 17. Lindsay?
Lyle, we do not currently have quorum. We're just having some people experiencing some technical difficulties. So if people can bear with us, we're just adding some more people to the meeting.
Okay, good. I know we had accepted, or 27 clubs had accepted the invite, so I'm looking forward to the rest being able to join us. We'll pop back to this to confirm. Next message is for the voting member delegates. Please use the chat feature for voting and always start with your club name. When we call for a vote, we'll be asking only if you're opposed to the motion. This AGM is being recorded. Everyone is welcome to use the Q&A option for any inquiries. I guess, Scott, without a quorum, happy to make the approval of the agenda, but can we proceed?
My suggestion is if Terry is ready, you might want to just hopefully she doesn't think we're putting her on the spot, but
I will do that. Okay, at this point, I'd like to give a very warm welcome to our special guest, Terry Palanchuk, Chair of Curl Canada's Board of Governors, who's joining us to say a few words. Terry, could you please?
Thanks, Lyle, and no worries. Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to participate in your AGM on behalf of the Curling Canada Board of Governors. We recently held our National Curling Congress in Halifax, where I had the pleasure of catching up with Scott and Lyle. The focus of this year's Congress was the future of curling in Canada. And during the event, Nolan delivered an address that challenged us to reflect on where we are today and where we need to go to ensure a strong and sustainable future for our sport. He spoke about our current reality and highlighted what is working well within our system. Curling remains culturally iconic, community-centered, nationally appreciated, and globally respected. These are significant strengths, and they are supported by many positive realities within our sport. We have a strong national identity, a deep volunteer legacy and community ownership, established championship structures with loyal audiences, a high performance pathway that continues to produce international success, a multi-generational participation model, a federated system with built-in regional accessibility, and broad support for alignment and growth across many levels. Yet beneath these strengths lies a degree of fragility. We also face significant challenges such as volunteer burnout, a fragmented system, inconsistent participant experiences, misaligned incentives, resistance to change, and systemic underfunding. At Curling Canada, we recognize a fundamental truth. We have built a system that delivers tremendous value through our 4 pillars: community engagement, leadership in sport, championship events, and high performance. Through these pillars, we create community belonging, lifelong participation opportunities, economic impact, and performance excellence. Yet too often we price, structure, and fund our system as though it does not deliver that value. In many ways, we continue to undervalue what the sport of curling contributes to Canadian community. Congress provided an opportunity for meaningful discussion and collaboration, and we emerged with several key focus areas. These include continuing to work together across our system to share and develop best practices related to financial sustainability, system alignment, and increasing public awareness of curling's value. We also define success for a healthy curling system as a 3-legged stool: people who participate in and support the sport, facilities that enable the sport to be delivered, and systems that are aligned, sustainable, and effective. This is why the relationship between Curl BC and Curling Canada, like our partnerships with all member associations, is so important. We are excited to see British Columbia continue to host national events and showcase its communities. Richmond will host the Canadian Wheelchair Curling Championship next year, an event it has successfully delivered in the past. In addition, multiple bids from BC communities for the 2027-28 season are currently under review. These strong expressions of interest demonstrate both the strength of curling in this province and the value of our collaborative partnerships. At this point, I would like to congratulate all of this year's award recipients. In particular, I want to recognize the Cloverdale Curling Club for hosting such a successful Canadian Mixed Doubles Championship, an event I had the pleasure of attending part of it. Your community spirit, dedication, and hospitality shone brightly throughout the championship. I'm also so pleased to see the unveiling of Curl BC's new brand identity. As Scott noted, this aligns with the visual identity being adopted across Curling Canada and our provincial and territorial associations. It reflects a shared commitment to a more unified and recognizable curling presence across the country, while still celebrating the unique strengths and traditions of each province and territory. Thank you once again for the opportunity to join you this evening. On behalf of the Curling Canada Board of Governors, thank you for everything you do to strengthen and grow our sport. We look forward to continuing to work together to build a healthy, sustainable, and vibrant future for curling in British Columbia and across Canada.
Thanks, Terry. Well said. And we look forward to working with Curling Canada through the future. I'll come back to our confirmation of quorum. Lindsay, could you please confirm that we have a quorum and the number of member facilities now present?
I just have to ask one favor. I have someone that's come in as halftime sales, and we're not quite sure who that person is. If they could just put in the chat their name, please.
I do have a couple other items if we're still working on it that I could cover.
I also there's another Don Grant Richmond, perfect. And then the person that came in under a Soyuz, if you could identify who you are as well, please. Lyle, I'm going to let you just proceed, and we're just going to verify. We're just confirming one more person.
I'll introduce the board.
Thank you.
Well, I'm the chair of the Board of Governors. Here are the other members of the board who served this past season. Brenda Sims, Vice Chair. Erlene Graham, Vice Chair. Blake Fizzard, Governor. Drew Carmichael, Governor. Dwayne Udy, Governor. Greg Graham, Governor. Pauline Pillar, Governor, and Penny Shantz, Governor. A big thank you to these governors for all their voluntary contributions to Curl BC this past year. At this time, I would also especially like to welcome any life and honorary life members who have joined the meeting. Thanks for joining us. And in order to achieve Curl BC's goals, we rely upon a network of volunteers. On behalf of Curl BC Board of Governors, I'd like to recognize all the club volunteers, event hosts, committee members, consultants, and facilitators, and of course, ice technicians and officials. You make it all work, and we thank you. The 2025-26 season marked a year of continued growth, stronger connections, and meaningful progress across the curling community in British Columbia. As the final year of Curl BC's Vision 26 strategic plan, the organization remained focused on supporting member facilities, expanding participation, and strengthening development pathways in collaboration with its partners. And throughout it all, Curl BC staff has been dedicated, proactive, enthusiastic. As chair and on behalf of all of us, I would like to commend their ongoing commitment on the development of curling in British Columbia. I will pop back again to our...
Lyle, I can confirm we have 18 voting members present.
Okay. Thank you. And we need 18, so that's 9, 10. Was it 10 or 9 that need to vote in favor?
10.
10, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, just to go over the overview again, to the instruction to the voting member delegates. Please use the chat feature for voting. Always start with your club name. When we call for a vote, we'll be asking only if you're opposed to the motion. This AGM is being recorded, and everyone is welcome to use the Q&A option for any inquiries. First order of business then is approval of the agenda. I would like to refer everyone to the AGM agenda for approval, and I'd ask if there was any amendments to the agenda. Please use the chat box to provide us any amendments and include your club's name. Okay, hearing none, the motion to approve the agenda as is was moved by Lorianne McGowan of Langley Curling Club and seconded by Kent Bird of the Abbotsford Curling Club. And I now call for a vote. Please use the chat box only if you are opposed.
No one is opposed.
All right, thanks, Lindsay, for confirming. The motion is carried. Next item for approval is the minutes. Please refer to the minutes from the last annual general meeting held on June 5th, 2025. Please use the chat box to inform us of any clarifications or additions. Hearing none, the motion to approve the minutes for the June 5th, 2025 Annual General Meeting minutes was moved by Lori-Ann McGowan, Langley Curling Center, and seconded by Kent Bird of Abbotsford Curling Club, and I now call for a vote. Please use the chat box only if you're opposed. All right, Lindsay?
No one is opposed.
The motion is carried. Next item up is our presentation of the 25-26 financial statements. I'll ask Scott Braley to present. Before we begin on this year's financial report, I would like to recognize Greg Graham for serving as chair of the Finance and Audit Committee and for all his hard work over the course of this year. Thank you, Greg. And now I'd like to call upon Scott Braley, our CEO, to present the 25-26 financial statements. Scott.
Thank you, Lyle. And yes, thanks to Greg. We would have been in trouble, Lyle, if we didn't thank him. It's so great to have him on the board and his critical analysis. We're going to use the Green Book. This one doesn't look quite green, but you should have received this in the materials that Lindsay's and others had sent to you. And this will be the basis of the presentation. And we'll be covering three topics: the results of the past fiscal year, the auditor's report, and then Lyle will guide you through a motion to reappoint Lone Calder as the auditors for Curl BC for the current fiscal year. They're doing a great job for us. So you don't get to just sit back and relax here. You do have three roles as we go through this report. And the first is to know the principal sources of Curl BC's revenues. And the second is how they're being used or spent. And finally, to be aware of the financial statement and the auditor's report, and to be as fluent as you can with that, and obviously to ask any questions you may have afterwards. So, bottom line, we were down negative 13,200 this year. We thought we would have a small surplus, but some expenses in March just put us just below. That's in comparison to the previous year where we were about plus 14, so it kind of offset last year's small gain. There's four funds that the auditor is tracking. The first is the general or unrestricted fund. It's just over 200,000, 201. Capital assets, about 85,000. Restricted fund, and I'll explain that on the next slide, is 10,000. And finally, the operating reserve fund, which includes the Jim Schumann Curling Assistance Program, has increased to over 134,000. So what are these funds? The general fund is to fund the core operations in all three pillars of the current strategic plan, and you'll see a graph of that in a minute. What is invested in capital assets represent? Well, it's the value that's been invested net of amortization. And one of the things you'll see in the statements is how that amortization is calculated, what the original investment was, and what it's worth now. The restricted fund refers to grants, usually ones where we haven't been able to completely spend it in the current fiscal years, but the granting agency allows us to additional year to spend that money, and there's a small amount in that this year. Finally, the internally restricted operating reserve fund internally means the board has restricted this fund. It's in part available to member facilities in urgent need of low-cost loans, but it's also a reserve for Curl BC itself to make sure we have funds in times of need. I just wanted to thank the PIC, the Pacific International Cup Legacy Committee that provided over $64,000 in funding this past year in memory of Jim Schumann. A very meaningful contribution, which will help both Curl BC and its clubs moving forward. So, how did we get here? With this, these next two, you have to watch carefully. The restricted fund here is actually combining the capital assets and the operational reserve, and the unrestricted is the general fund on its own. And you can see what's happened since last year is the restricted fund has gone up significantly while the unrestricted fund has gone down, and the net effect is the negative 13,000. Apparently somebody's phoning me. We'll ignore that. And so where are we at? This is a little easier to follow this slide, I think, from the previous explanation, where we see the restricted fund of 144,360. That's combining the curling assistance program with the 10,000 remaining grant. So 144. Unrestricted, the general fund 201. Property and equipment 85,000 approx. Now, if you look back to 2023, you'll see that we were significantly higher, but that's back to the days of the COVID relief funding flowing in and paying for lots. So we're quite highly subsidized. That funding stopped, and the last 3 years have been fairly stable. So you see where we're at in 2026 is almost the same as in 2024. But when I look at this, and Greg and others on the board, they'd say we'd really like to build up that unrestricted fund, and as well as the curling assistance program funding. So there's work to do. So for those of you who don't like looking at numbers and text, this should be a relief. And I always like to thank Marnie Jepson for creating this presentation about 15 years ago. And just like the way these graphs depict and point out to you the major sources of revenue and expenditure. And you'll see that light, I'll call it light orange, for affiliation. So membership is almost 33%. So 1/3 of our revenue is from membership. So that's fairly dependent on membership. Keep in mind it now includes the membership fees for Curling Canada. It always has, but it's now more significant. And so that number will go up over the next 3 or 4 years. It does mean, though, that we're matching the members' contribution by 2 to 1. So 2/3 of the revenue is from other sources. And the largest of that, government, is about 25%. We'd like to get government back over 30% again, but at the moment, the provincial government is just saying, no, we don't have additional funding. There is interest. Obviously, they spent a lot on the FIFA event we're on at the moment, but that wasn't really the sports system, so we need to get them over to that. So where does it all go? Well, the good to see that programs and services in the, I'll say light blue, I probably getting the color wrong, is 30%. So 30% on programs and services, but staffing is closing in on 40%. It's really, though, the only way we can deliver at the high level that is expected now. And also with the increased cost of living, We have staff involved. As much as the board and all the other volunteers help and contribute, you do need somebody full-time or at least part-time but ongoing, keeping track of all the programs and the compliance and the applications that occur. It after the season tends to be our busiest as we're reporting and applying for the next year. So welcome you to ask any questions about those two graphs when I've finished this presentation. But now we get to move to the actual financial statements themselves. So I'm in the green book, and we're on page 1. And page 1 is, if you printed it out, you'll see it's a little paler than the rest. It wasn't on purpose. It just, we needed to get it signed by Lyle and Greg, and so it is a little different color than the other pages, so it should stand out for you. And so what's on this page? It is the key page. That's why the auditor insists that 2 board members sign it. Well, it talks about the assets, and you'll see that there's increased cash, receivables, and prepaid expenses. So that's good. There's been a decrease in property and equipment, and that's because we had to buy a lot of equipment for the Invictus Games last year that was in part provided by a $35,000 capital gaming grant, a one-time grant. And of course, that's all depreciated now. So that's why it's a little bit different than normal. Under liabilities, the payables are current, and the fund balances, which are the net assets or equity, and we've been talking about those funds. The restricted represents 50% of one grant, so that's that $10,000 amount you see on that page. There's transfers for equipment purchases and amortization, and the aforementioned increase in the internally restricted ORF operating reserve fund. Okay, now we're moving to the notes. For those of you who don't like financial statements, I always encourage you to look at the notes. Not necessarily the first couple, because they're quite lengthy and wordy and required of the auditors to talk about the nature of the organization and summarize all the significant accounting policies. But the rest of the notes are quite good at explaining what the various numbers in the statement mean, and you'll see on the income statement that there are numbers, and this is where the explanations are. First of all, number 5, note 5 explains the capital assets and how they're calculated, the remaining value. Note 6 provides explanation of the restricted fund. Note 7, the operating reserve fund, how that came about. Note 9, that's where the 50/50 is covered, and that's become quite a significant source of revenue, and also talks about what we call contra or in-kind sponsorship, and that essentially donation of goods to help. Note 10, the lease commitment. The office, you can see me in here. We'll be here till the summer of 2029. We hope to be able to continue. This is a wonderful location in the city of Burnaby. So, but we just have a couple of years left on that lease. And then Note 11 talks about the Curling for Life Endowment Fund, which is held by the Vancouver Foundation. So it's actually separate from us, but we do receive approximately 5% a year of the principal in that fund, which has grown to about 85,000. We encourage people to donate to that because it has an ongoing there's an ongoing contribution to curling based on the interest of that fund. And note 11 talks about remuneration of employees, contractors, but to point out that governors receive no remuneration. Finally, talking about the last couple of pages of the statements are the schedules 1 and 2, which is a breakout to show the diversity of grant funding as well as the national revenue we receive in part from Curling Canada and the Coaches Association of Canada. And then Schedule 3 shows is more of a breakout for you on member service expenses and payments. Okay, that's almost the audited financial statement, but now we're back to the beginning of it, and there's a qualification. Now, this qualification isn't serious news because they have the same qualification every year. And the beginning of the report here, where it says Lone Calder, introduces you to the statements and then says we have to qualify this because it's consistent, but this qualification is consistent with not-for-profit organizations that run operations that include events with revenues that are not able to be verified. Well, that's certainly us. We run about 10 of those every year. We can verify most of it for the auditor, but some of it is run by the club directly, and we try to include all the revenue and expenses for those events. But it is relatively minor part, but that's just to explain why there's a qualification. And what we do with these statements, with the auditor's approval, we add a bit of commentary at the beginning, and my favorite graphs there. But on page 3, there's a comparison, and this was a request by a member, a good one about many years ago, that they'd like to see how we do compared to budget. And you'll see that on page 3 that where we did better than budget and where we didn't, and so it's there for your reference. But what you may find interesting for a couple of reasons, right after that, there's the 2026-27 budget. And Lyle, Terry, and I heard a couple of weeks ago in Halifax, we, for the most part, should be focusing on looking forward. We can spend an X amount of time looking backwards at what just happened, but looking forward, the Curl BC board has agreed to revise the strategic plan, which is now to be known as Vision 2030. And for those of you with vision mind like mine, you know that that's almost a perfect vision, 2030. And so that has been simplified, I would suggest. The strategic plan, with the advice of both the staff and the board, we've trimmed down to just two pillars, which are curling operations and business operations. And each of those have 4 ends for a total of 8 ends, which means we're in sync with most curling events now. So curling operations, business operations, and then you can see when you look at page 3 that for the most part, member services, which is the 5th end, is where we're generating the most revenue, along with revenue generation, the 6th end, and the rest of the areas are subsidized. And that's okay. That's what we're doing. We're trying to generate enough revenue so we can subsidize, in particular, curling operations and also services like marketing, communications, and recognition, and partnerships that assist the membership. So encourage you to look at that page 3 in particular. And just to say that this is pretty consistent. The last part of this slide is we're going to continue a long-term focus, measuring outcomes, providing the board with monthly updates, working on diversifying revenue sources, and in particular, doing a lot of work with Sport BC and the BC Amateur Sport Fund to set up more projects to help our clubs raise funds. And that's it for me, Law.
Thanks, Scott. Next item is the appointing of our auditor. Over the past year.
Oh,
Lone
well, you
Calder-
may, sorry, you may want to field questions. I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
if anybody
I'm
will let me
sorry.
get away without any questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. There was one question in the chat. Can somebody read it?
We don't actually have any questions at this time.
Okay, I'll pause for another moment. Is there any questions? Okay, thank you, Scott. Thanks, Greg, again. Over the past year, Lone Calder LLP has done an excellent job for our organization. They have agreed to conduct next year's annual audit at the same nonprofit rate as Curl BC has previously received. I'd like to propose a motion to reappoint the reappointment of Lone Calder LLP as auditors for Curl BC for 26-27 fiscal year. This was moved by Lorianne McGowan, Langley Curling Center, and seconded by Kent Bird, the Abbotsford Curling Club. And I open the floor for any discussion. All right, seeing none, I now call for the vote. As before, please use the chat box only if you're opposed. Lindsay, I'm not seeing anything, but
No one
please
is opposed.
confirm. Thank you. The motion is carried. Next, Scott will present our operational report. Scott?
Thank you, Lyle. And now we're going to move to the Blue Book and the materials you received. And I think the most important part of this is to thank our great staff. They pretty much put this together on their own. I did a little bit near the end, but we really do have a fantastic staff as well as a fantastic board. And I think when you look at this book, you'll see the quality of the work that they are providing. So a big thank you, real privilege to work with them. I mentioned that we had revised the strategic plan for Vision 2030, but this book has been framed in the old strategic plan, which was 3 pillars and 9 ends with a big overall end, which meant we had 10 ends. And so, because indeed we're looking backwards a bit here and reporting on the past fiscal year, that's the framing of this. But next year you'll see it with the revised framework. So end 1 is really focused on member services, and that detail there explains we had 83 clubs involved again, which is the same as the previous year. We had a number of coffee chats and educational webinars, average of 25 participants. We'd like to have more. 160 chrono records checks. That's not something you normally talk about, but this has to be done for safe sport. We have a couple of consultants now that we pay to help our clubs, and they provided over 200 hours for those clubs. Really pleased to see over 700,000 in community gaming grants that come out of those consultation hours in large part. And finally, just to thank Kelowna Curling Club for hosting the 2025 Business Curling Symposium and Curling Canada for their collaboration. It was nice to have 20 curling facilities there, and it was a good few days. N2 is focused on curling education. Curl BC is viewed as one of the leading provincial sport organizations in this area. And this detail here is really about how much training was done. 76 coaches in both the competition and club streams, 18 competition coach evaluations. So we pay the senior coaches, the coach facilitators to do those evaluations. 47 ice techs trained. We all know how important that is. Really nice to see 3 umpires advance to chief umpire status. Again, that renewal that is so important in that area to make sure our key people are in place. And my privilege to recognize that Patty Caldwell was part of the officiating team at the 2026 Winter Olympics. Congratulations to Patty. And 3 is communications and marketing. And you're probably all familiar with the Curling Connection. And it was good to see the open rate increased from 34 to 50%. That's significant. That means half the people were opening it up, and we have over 5,000 people that get it. So it's that's a good number. The new website was launched. It seems like the old website now, but it hasn't been around that long, and it really I think has really improved the user experience. Social media presence experienced strong growth. We've got a number of people assisting us in that area, some very creative young people, and some great interviews on social media that are just help promote the sport in a different way. And Instagram, Facebook engagement all went up, and we just unveiled the new logo. So those first 3 N's were all under what we called Pillar 1, enhancing member services and engagement. We're now moving to Pillar 2, which is leading long-term curler development, or LTCD. And the first, we'll call it N4, is participation. And you're going to see there's 2 slides here, one for able-bodied and then one for adaptive. And a lot of this is youth development. So 73 athletes at the 2026 BC Winter Games, and a big thank you to Trail and Rosslyn curling clubs for hosting. 20 coaches participated in the BC Games mentorship program. We don't always think of how many coaches we're mentoring with a multi-sport games like the BC Games, but that gives you the numbers. That's quite significant. We collaborate with Curling Canada on the Hit, Draw, Tap program, and we had 60 athletes participate. Rockfest is also another one we work with Curling Canada on. 28 athletes qualified for that. And Curl BC's Rock Slide Summer Camp, probably we would say the most successful ever, with 103 athletes, and certainly financially it finally turned a profit because we had more people, not just athletes, but also close to 20 coaches involved in that program. On the adaptive side of participation, the ACE program, Adaptive Curling Experience, was launched at Peace Arch. So thanks to them for hosting those 4 sessions. The Women in Curling Summit was hosted by Kamloops Curling Club. Big thank you to Kamloops for hosting. And Girls Rock events were hosted by both Victoria and Duncan on the island. Again, the Women in Curling Summit and Girls Rock are collaborations with Curling Canada. We're on to N5, focused on competitions. And here are your numbers, some big numbers here. So 15 host clubs, can't do it without them. There were 10 qualifying events. This is including the BC Games qualifiers, the men's and the women's qualifiers. 20 championships overall. So it's quite significant, and it included 6,000 volunteer hours. So it's amazing what has been done each year by the organization, but even more so this year in terms of the tracking of those numbers, give you the magnitude. Uh, and of course, we don't do it on our own. We do it with all those clubs and their volunteers. BC Winter Games participation up 82%. Well, that is a real highlight. We were a little concerned a few years ago that participation was dropping off in some of the zones. All 8 zones had teams this year, and both the boys and the girls. Curl BC was rated 99 out of 100 for its on the scoring mechanism that BC Games uses. So suffice it to say, it was a huge success. On the national scene, big congratulations to our team of the year, Team Young, that won the Canadian Club Championships, and to Team Sears and Swartz, who won the Canadian Men's Stick Championship, and Team Cowan and Team Craig won the bronze at the Canadian Seniors. Congratulations to all those teams who medaled on the national stage. Now we move to high performance, and we just really pleased with the addition of Kayla McMillan and Lindsay DeBoo. Under the mentorship of Melissa Saligo, we just have a really strong high performance program, getting stronger. 98 athletes from the ages of 112 to 25 plus. Victoria has been officially recognized by Curling Canada as a regional training center and gets some additional funding for that. The High Performance Coach Development Program welcomed 23 coaches, so that's so important in this area. And we held training camps at 2 regional performance centers. All right, we've reached the third and final pillar, building partnerships and capacity. And this is where N7 to 9 reside. And N7 is focused on revenue generation and good corporate governance. And you see that we had about 460,000 in provincial funding, which was actually down, but 86,000 in federal funding, which was an increase thanks to our share of the 2025 Briar, which was unexpected to us. We didn't realize we were going to get quite so much. So it just, again, thanks to Kelowna Curling Club and the City of Kelowna for the great job of hosting such a successful Briar, and of course Curling Canada, our partnership there. We established a philanthropic support framework for member facilities, and a key part of that is the BC Amateur Sport Fund, listed there as the BC ASF. We now have 21 projects on the go to raise money. That doesn't mean there's 21 clubs involved. We'd like there to be, but Curl BC has 2 of its own, and the Optimists have 1. And then there's several clubs that have 2 projects on the go. It means there's about 15 clubs, member facilities with projects. We'd like to get that number up to 30 by 2030. So we'll look forward to working with you on that. Corporate sponsorship is down. It's down pretty much everywhere, but we still maintain 150,000 in total, about 90,000 in cash. We're looking to rebuild that after COVID and Trump. Governance update, and we continue to update our policy registry. The next up is to look at the safe sport policies again, and we mentioned the new strategic plan. Excuse me. And 8, strategic partnerships. We continue to strengthen ties with municipal councils and recreation departments wherever we can. as well as municipal sport tourism organizations. There was an excellent conference held in Richmond I'm going to say it was November last year, first time that we had a provincial sport tourism. I had the privilege of speaking at it, as did others, and it was a real success and really allowed us to meet with a lot of municipal sport tourism people and develop relationships, which will bode well for the future. Really help, for example, with us getting Chilliwack to host the BC men's, women's, and U18s in the next season. We continue to collaborate with Sport BC and other provincial sport organizations, PSOs, to advocate for system-wide funding. I had a chance to speak last week to the Budget Consultation Committee. They had a number of questions, which is good. Last year I spoke and they didn't have anything to ask me, so kind of like our finance report. But hopefully we're going to have impact, and the fact that the federal government has just announced 775 million new funds for 5 years will help. BC needs to keep up. And the staff, the Curl BC staff, has been active committee members for Curling Canada, Sport BC, and Via Sport committees. And last but not least, N9 awards and recognition. Erlene Graham and her committee did a great job again this year, and that's what you saw at the beginning, just before the AGM. And you see a couple of our award winners there. The Breaking Barriers Award was introduced this season. Really pleased to see that introduced. It's so important from the inclusion, equity, diversity perspective. So well done to the committee for introducing that. If you look at from 44 to 66, that's a 50% increase in nominations. So well done to everybody on that. There were scholarships awarded to Matthew Reynolds and Jamie Miller. Congratulations to both of them. But it also reminds us we need more scholarships for our young people, and we look forward to working on creating additional scholarships for the youth. And Al Kersey, Keith Switzer, Bethany Evans, Tom Wilkins, Jesse Teed, Adam Fenton, and Elisa Evans all received external recognition for their contributions and performance in curling. And I think that's it for Mila.
Thanks, Scott. We'll open this up for any questions on the operational report.
Nothing has come up yet.
All right. Thank you. I think you'll all like the Vision 2030 plan that trims it to 8 and the 2 major focuses. So look forward to you seeing that. Next item, I'd like your assistance with 2 special resolutions. In 2025, Curl BC was part of an operational enhancement initiative, OEI, conducted by Sport Law for all provincial sports organizations. As part of this OEI, Sport Law asked 2 questions about Curl BC's bylaws. They were, how can members call a meeting? And the second one, how can members request an issue be addressed? Curl BC's board recommended the following changes to Curl BC's membership. First one is recommendation number 1. The motion to add the following sentence to bylaw 19. A minimum of 10% of the voting members may requisition the governors to call a general meeting for the purposes stated in the requisition, which must meet the requirements of Section 75 of Societies Act, was moved by Lori-Ann McGowan, Langley Curling Center, and seconded by Kent Bird, Abbotsford Curling Club. Open the floor to any discussion. All right, hearing none or seeing none, I call for the vote. A special resolution requires approval by at least 2/3 of the voting members present. which is 12?
I'm using 13. I don't know if you
13,
could.
yeah, we
Yep.
need 13. So call for the vote. Are there any opposed? And as before, please use the chat box only if you're opposed.
No one is opposed.
All right, this motion is carried. Recommendation number 2, the motion to add the following point to bylaw 25. With the support of at least 5% of the membership, voting members may send notice of a matter that the members propose to have considered at an annual general meeting. This proposal must be received at least 7 days before the AGM and meet the requirements of Section 81 of Societies Act. Was moved by Lorianne McGowan, Langley Curling Center, and seconded by Kent Bird of Abbotsford Curling Club. And I open the floor to any discussion. Seeing none, I now call for the vote. Again, a special resolution requires approval by at least 2/3 of the voting members present.
Lyle, there is a question as to why 5%.
I'll ask Scott or Brenda. I believe that
I think it was.
that came up in the discussions with him. But go ahead, Scott.
Thanks, Lyle. We wanted to have a reasonable threshold. The higher the threshold, the more difficult. The whole purpose of both of these special resolutions, as you can tell, is to provide the membership with greater input, a reasonable input, and they recommendation here was 5%, so it would be a reasonable threshold. And what that means, assuming, I believe we have 83, you'd need 5 people, I believe, with that, or 5, sorry, 5 clubs to put that forth.
Thanks, Scott. I remember the discussion being it's not just 1, maybe 2 clubs with an issue.
Yeah, I see there's a little debate between 10 and 5. I don't know whether we could go back a slide for just to look at that we did use 10% in the, but that was about requisitioning the governors to call a meeting. This one is just to have something. Now let's go forward again. And this is about raising a matter at a meeting like this. It's not to, and so the thought was to have this lower.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, I'll call for the vote. Special resolution requires at least 2/3 of the voting members. Is there any opposed? As before, use the chat box if you are opposed.
No one is opposed.
All right, this motion is carried, and I thank you for the participation and the questions. Item 14 is our elections of governors for 2-year terms. We have 4 candidates for governors, each with 2-year terms. Earlene Graham, she is a current governor. Greg Graham is a current governor. Dave Durant and Nando Salvio. Upon a successful motion to approve, all candidates shall be considered elected by acclamation. The motion to re-elect Earlene Graham, Greg Graham, and elect Dave Durant and Nando Salvio to 2-year terms by acclamation was moved by Lorianne McGowan, Langley Curling Center, and seconded by Kent Bird, Abbotsford Curling Club. And I now call for the vote. Please use the chat box only if you're opposed.
No one is opposed.
Yay, welcome to the team. The motion is carried. I declare Arlene, Greg, Dave, and Nando elected by acclamation. Would like to thank them all for agreeing to serve. There's currently one vacancy on the Board of Governors. The board will meet tomorrow to appoint a candidate to serve a one-year term. Now I'd like to recognize retiring board members. Drew Carmichael and Dwayne Udy have completed their terms as governors, and we're very proud of the contribution they have made to Curl BC. Their passion will be missed on the board, and we know it will continue in their future endeavors and the love of curling. On behalf of Curl BC family, we'd like to thank the two of you for your time and dedication to our sport. Thank you. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. The following annual meeting, following this annual meeting, the new board will meet to elect executive, and members will be informed shortly after the meeting is completed. There being no further business, a motion to adjourn has been moved by Kent Bird, Abbotsford Curling Club. Thanks, Kent. I declare the motion. Oh, I guess I'd wait for results. Everybody's good?
No one is opposed.
All right, very good. Well, thanks everybody for your patience tonight. Thanks for your interest in attending our meeting. I declare the motion carried and the meeting adjourned. On behalf of the board and staff, take care and have a great summer. We'll see you all next year.
Thanks, Lyle.